Okay, looks like most of you are now with us. So thank you everybody for joining us today for another 2020 Innovation webinar. It's great to have you here with us. Hopefully you've all been well since our last webinar. We know that a lot of you join these every month, so hopefully you know by now what we like to do. But if this is your first webinar, then these are just monthly sessions where we like to showcase the success story of one of our customers, some insights from our partners, or just the latest updates from the world of innovation. So if you aren't already, please be sure to subscribe and try and join us every month. We always try and make sure that these sessions are as interesting as possible for everyone who joins. This is an interactive session. We'll have a nice Q&A at the end, so please don't hesitate to submit any comments or questions in the Q&A or the chat. Okay, let's get started. So these will be our speakers today. We have DP Prakash, the co-CEO and co-founder of Utopian, Lisa Sibilia, the co-CEO and co-founder of Utopian, and Steve Reed, the VP of US Innovation at Qmarkets. So Utopian will be the main speakers for today, and if you didn't catch it, the topic is on the 10 innovation inhibitors and how to overcome those. So this is the agenda. We'll get started with a quick poll where we'll ask you guys a question, and hopefully we can learn a bit more about you and tailor the content towards your needs. Then Steve will speak for a few minutes, sharing a bit of information about the partnership and going into detail about things he's been thinking about lately. That sounds like quite an informal title, and but it's I'll leave it to Steve. I won't spoil anything there. Then we have the top 10 innovation inhibitors from Utopian and the Q&A session at the end. Okay, so if you guys are ready, you should very shortly see a pop-up on your screen, which will include 2 questions. So I'll give you 30 seconds or so to answer these. First of all, we have, are you happy with the rate, pace, and progress of digital transformation in your firm? Pretty simple there, just a yes or no question. And secondly, we have, what is the primary innovation inhibitor in your firm? We have technology leadership related, people leadership related, and other. So just 3 answers there. And if you select other, then obviously we'd like to hear more about that and understand exactly why. So hopefully you can share that with us in the Q&A at the end. Okay, so we'll give it another 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Great, so thank you for sharing that with us. I'll actually share the results with you now. So as you can see, the majority of you aren't happy with the rate and pace of digital transformation in your organization. So obviously there's an issue there that needs to be corrected. And it looks like for the majority of you, the issue is leadership related. And interestingly, none of you have selected technology related. So maybe the technology is there, but the leadership aren't able to capitalize on it currently. So interesting results there, and I'm sure our speakers will have some answers for you in relation to those. Okay, so like I said, if you have any questions, please feel free to share those with us, and we'll address them at the end of the session. But for now, I'll hand you over to Steve.
Great, thanks, Elliot. And just to piggyback off what Elliot said in introducing, so we're excited to have DP and Lisa Sibilia with us today. Our relationship with DP actually started several years ago as he was heading up the innovation program for a large semiconductor company. They were doing research into ideation platforms, and DP selected Qmarkets. And since then, obviously things have progressed. DP and Lisa now head up Utopian, and obviously we enable what they teach, what they coach, what they preach to their clients. So I like to start with this slide. You'll probably see this almost every month, but I want to do a twist on this, right? So when we meet with new clients, one thing that's really important to us is our tool, absolutely, from a sales perspective, it will look, feel, it will do what you want. We're confident in that. We have no concerns about that. The bigger question is, what's your strategy? What's the process that you actually want to implement? And so these are things that we ask our clients to think about. One of the things, and this is where these are some things I've been thinking about and observations I've made over the last few years. It's really coming to a head recently. And so I'd ask you to think about this. These are just nice platitudes, but they're gonna tell a story here. The first is a quote from James Clear. If you haven't read the book Atomic Habits, I'd recommend it. It's an outstanding read. I would tell you that innovation is absolutely a habit and applies here. And so one of the things I'd ask you to think about is what he talks about, which is anyone that thinks they're going to win a race, right? If I'm an Olympic athlete, I'm thinking about the finish line. It's always the finish line, right? And really the point that James makes and that I would echo is I see this in my customers at times. They're looking at process, they're looking at culture, they're looking at all these things. What do we want to do? How do we want to do it? And in reality, the best way to innovate is to innovate. It's to start, right? To get into the starting block. You can't finish that race. You can't win the race unless you're actually there, right? So sometimes instead of getting, and I would use the term paralysis by analysis, right? Don't get so caught up in the details. Our system, and you'll see it on the next slide, is built to help you. It's fully functional and ready to go out of the box without a complex process and a lot of different things required. The second is a quote from Bill Walsh, who I'm a sports guy. He famously said, "The score takes care of itself." And applying that to innovation, what that means to me is, and what he was saying is, if you practice correctly and you do it for a sustained amount of time, you will win inevitably, right? It may not be every game, but we focus too much on the end result and the score. And the reality is this applies to innovation. If we are looking at what's the immediate ROI, what's immediately going to be the payout, then you're disabling some of these habits that you need to set in place. So I would tell you, start simple, start with best practices, and continue to innovate, right? It needs to be a daily habit. Additionally, it's funny, but right, everybody sets out with the same goal. I want to do X. I want to win this. I want to do that. It's not the goal, right? We get stuck on the goal. The goal itself of being innovative as a company, right? You'll see that as a vision statement. It sounds nice, but if I walked into the 100 largest companies in the world and said, "What's your vision statement?" they would probably all look very similar. So it's not the vision, it's the execution of that vision. And so this leads then to the term myopic. Recently in October, I listened to a leader of sorts who spoke about the word myopic. And it was really fascinating. One, because it's a word in the history of my 50 years of living that I've never heard used in a sentence before. And secondly, because it's such a unique word that it's kind of stuck with me. And the point of what he talked about was to think big picture, right? We get caught up in the details. We need to look at the big picture. And to me, this applies to innovation in the following way. We want to do new products, CI, operational excellence. We want to change our approach to customers. All that will happen over time. Again, similar to what Bill Walsh said, but we have to be willing to give it time, right? We can't just fail after 3 months, right? We tried innovation, it didn't work. Innovation needs to be ongoing and it needs to be sustained, and it will grow over time. And the way it grows is another analogy that I like, which is ice melts at 32 degrees. If I took a block of ice and I sat it on a counter and we were all looking at it and I had a thermometer in it, and we would have no idea unless we saw the temperature change that it was melting. And so what happens is at 24, 25, 28 degrees, literally nothing happens with that ice. Does that mean that it's not melting? It absolutely is in process of melting, right? It's heating up. And at 32 degrees, suddenly we have the evidence, right? The evidence of the ice melting happens at 32 degrees. And so the point there, the principle that I would share with you is, again, commitment, right? First, from leadership to just dive in. Secondly, to make it a daily habit, to not get so caught up in what's the ROI, to have a long-term vision, and ultimately the results you're looking for when it hits 32 degrees. I will tell you that our amazing customers that are extremely successful at this have all those pieces in place. And at the end of the day, that 32 degrees has happened for them. And everyone looks and says, oh, look what's happening. But there's all this that happened when no one was able to see it. It is definitely a process that takes some time. And then this is just our best practice. I go back to this over and over. The more we stick to this at the start, the more likely you are to be successful. And the system is built to absolutely do this, which is collect your crowd, right? Collect a topic, let them collaborate, have a clear evaluation process, and then ultimately reward and implement best ideas. And again, we're very confident that the system can do what you want it to do, but it takes a clear vision. And DP and Lisa, I'll hand it over to you to share some really key insights into 10 things to be aware of as you innovate.
Thank you so much, Steve and Elliot. So let me see if I can get my screen over here. Hang on just a second. Okay.
I love that Chris posted that it actually melts at 32 degrees. I appreciate that. Thank you, Chris, for correcting me.
Okay, can you see the screen now?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, great. So we are Utopian, an AI XR innovations company. Today, we're going to talk about the top 10 innovation inhibitors. Fantastic segue from my good friend and colleague, Steve. The Qmarkets experience has been phenomenal, and we are really glad to be here. I'm DP Prakash.
And I'm Lisa Sibilia.
So a couple of slides quickly on what Utopian is about. Digital transformation in enterprises and education, central to everything we do. We begin with innovation as a service. We're always creating pathways for frictionless learning. And we're guided by our core values, starting with the client at the center, the end user at the center. We are obsessing around that part and making sure we're innovating around the client experience all the time. Human-centered, with many of our experts from the Disney community who really understand happiness. Some of them are here. The idea of honoring the person in front. Innovating constantly by connecting to the child within. We think children are the greatest innovators. They're not afraid to try. Raising the bar by asking questions. Zero waste, AI predictor. That's a state that we think is going to be the winning state of any firm that's operating. And through this, we are striving to accelerate humanity to full potential. So that's really what Utopian's about. A little bit about our background experiences. As Steve said, when I was the global head of innovation, Global Foundries previously, at scale to actually drive innovation. How do you do that? And what an innovation program actually was wonderful. And the concept of idea management and innovation management was a necessity over the last 10 years. It's been a growing field, and Qmarkets turned out among the top 10 that I actually ranked with my team, turned out at the absolute top. And it's been a phenomenal journey from there. A pilot in a 16,000 member organization, 1,200 came out. So it's obvious to me that this should be part of the innovation operating system everywhere. I believe in the Qmarkets framework and what Steve just said. Just go and start. Really awesome. So a little bit of other background there. 2 decades at IBM, highly innovative company, as you know, in leadership experiences. Had a chance to work with, to study under Jack Welch directly. I have some stories to tell. My alma mater's UCLA. I did some graduate work in electrical engineering. So that's my electronics background for you, technology foundations for you, along with IIT Madras, and some background in film producing as well. So it's a mix.
Yeah, for me, I spent over a decade in education transformation. I'm a former Disney cast member and studied at Stanford Graduate School of Business under corporate innovation. Yeah, let's move forward, DP, to share some of what we learned. So there's a historical and fundamental shift happening through pandemic. And we're finding that a lot of organizations who have not prepared for unknowns, they're struggling because they've gotten too comfortable, and the organizational gaps are being brought to the forefront. When you look at the world, where digital transformation it seems to suggest technology. But that's only half of the story. And as the poll indicated, it's about the people and processes. And that needs to be talked about more. And there are big things at stake. So early on in my career, I decided to reverse engineer life and go to one of the top art schools in the country and imagine going to one of the top art schools without the ability to draw. It was done intentionally to be surrounded by top talent, to learn in a different way. And what I've learned through that is how we have to adapt as organizations. It doesn't matter how big or small you are. It's about how we connect to the people beyond the technology.
So barrier number one, let's get straight to it. Lacking a team of connected champions, not about individual champions. What we're realizing when we look across firms is, are the right people across functions engaged? Manufacturing Leadership Council, National Association of Manufacturers had a wonderful conference. 900 people participated, senior leaders and so on. And there was a session when an exasperated leader, right, somewhere in the middle, was saying, hey, I have hit a ceiling and it's a showstop. I'm not getting the resources I need to scale this up. Another leader, somewhere around that, perhaps closer to the shop floor, said, hey, I have created this wonderful work with innovation and a couple of dozen headsets are there. People are just not finding the time to scale this up and participate and create content and so on. It's so wonderful, right? These are symptoms. What we realize is that a chain is as strong as the weakest link. All that everybody is asking for is, I want the organization to pull together and scale this up and realize, why is it not happening? What is the foundational thing here? Why is there a chasm? Why are people not getting it? Turns out there is a tool called Appreciative Inquiry method. And this is not new. It's been there since the 1980s. And Case Western Reserve University has done some fundamental foundational work in this regard. And the theory goes like this. Day one, the first step is the last step. It's exactly as Steve Reed said, optimize to the starting point, not downstream, right? That's the problem. Get all the functions represented. You don't have to get all 16,000 people in the same room, but instead make sure that every function has a voice and the right people. That's what we call a team of champions. They have to be brought together at multiple functions level, as well as different levels in the organization, the top floor to the middle floor to the middle to the shop floor. And once you bring them together, appreciate the shared strength. What got the organization here in the first place? For a moment, pause on that and build on the shared strength. Turns out when that happens, and we use the concept of positive deviance, abundance deviance. So when you do that, I'll tell you what it is in a moment. You generate positivity. And when the brain has oxytocin released, then people are in a state of mind where they can innovate together. And that is scientifically proven. At that point, you're able to have the full realization of dreaming, designing, and so on. If you jump straight to it, some of the challenges that could come later is that, well, you never really involved me in the first place. So it's a balance, right, between between figuring out where to draw the line. Now, what exactly is the positive deviance, abundance deviance? United Nations, there are many examples. Case Western is full of them. But in terms of United Nations, they did a study. Impoverished, underserved communities, mothers and their children. That's the focus. They studied it. They found that there was a small fraction of moms who, in the same adverse conditions, they were able to find creative ways to get the children proper nutrition, and that those children were different. They were actually healthier. And so they said, what are the behaviors? And they found that these mothers found ingenious ways to find eggs, to find vegetables and greens. And those behaviors, when shared with the norm, they were able to shift the norm. So this is an example of positive deviance. What is going right, and understand those behaviors.
And as industry leaders, we see disagreements, and intelligent people disagree. We have to find common ground, sometimes walk through fire and come together, and through this really drive towards common business outcomes, whatever they are, be it ROI, capabilities, safety, quality. The focus is not on science fair activities or what is cool. It's that common definition of what matters to the organization to drive towards a cohesive target where the people are aligned in the common direction and don't look back because they're driving forward together.
Yet another item is what we consider the long pole in the tent. To drive an organization forward across every function, you need to have a single source of truth. Up until now, data was stored in all different places. So people are pulling from different places. That's passé. Now, with the cloud and the security in the cloud outperforming on premises and so on, these kinds of discussions have to be had quickly. And that particular function, people in that function have to recognize the effect that's there, gating effect, and they need to get the empowerment to the other parts of the organization by moving fast. Again, it is about recognizing your role in the rowing boat and moving quickly about multi-cloud adoption, security discussion, and so on. Delaying this gates the entire organization. Yet another thing is about incorrect use case selection. Skeptics have a disproportionate role in the outcome. What we notice is there are people who are experienced, who have tried, and many times they could actually play a pivotal role in whether an organization is going to adopt or not. And then there could be many use cases. And these folks, many times, they are right. They're actually having, they've tested and they've failed in the past, but technology has evolved. So when picking these solutions, what we have found is best practices we are observing when the leaders are able to pick use cases that show irrefutable value. The skeptics you get the skeptics to smile. When that happens, the organization moves forward better. In the one client, for example, they're working on a use case that would have taken 6 months. They're trying to target that for 6 weeks, and skeptics would have said, I told you so. What they did was recognizing it, and with the strategic partnership advice that we were giving, they were able to look at adjacent areas and come out with these low-hanging fruits that immediately added value in a matter of days and weeks, and not like quarters and quarters. And they were able to get the skeptics to smile. When that happened, the runway expanded for what they were working on. In the end, what they were going for 6 weeks took 15 months, but they ended up achieving that also. So getting that positivity and convincing with the right use case selection need to be shrewd there.
And the solution does not fit. So let's say not everything outside will work inside your organization. The goal is not to focus on what's shiny and cool, but what truly matters is this going to support our next steps with a 2x to 10x return. Based on firsthand experiences, Utopian could help in that regard. The challenge a lot of companies faced is they focus on futurists, and you could have amazing ideas, but how do they relate to the current pain points within your organization? Because if you look at the Gartner chart, which is the hype cycle, there's that moment where wow, we're going to try this, and it's the inflated expectations. And then you get to the roll your sleeves up. We need to prove this out. Is this going to work? Is this not going to work? And that's from my perspective, that's where the spark is needed, where you're self-motivating the team and figuring out what pieces work. It reminds me a lot of, if you've ever read the book, One Little Spark by Marty Sklar, and he shared in Disney the Goof Awards. And the Goof Awards are moments when you celebrate failure at Disney. And an example of failure that I think you'll get a kick out of is having a parade with live ducks. And Disney cannot always train those live ducks to stay in line and follow that organization. So that it's those funny moments where we learn the most and move forward from there.
Transactional relationships versus strategic partnerships. This is a big one, and I would say let me give you an example. Qmarkets and the partnership that I've experienced is, I would say, among the finest I've actually experienced. What is a partnership? Partnership is one that is committed for the long term. It's something where truth and trust. My guru Jack Welch would say, towards the end of his life, right, 80, 84, never seen a person that's a lifelong learner, so full of energy, loved business, and he said, fundamentally, business is about truth and trust. Stay close to truth. Speak the truth to the power, and trust. That's what great partners do. And innovating around the client experience. My experience with Qmarkets has been nothing short of extraordinary. That's why a 1,200 member pilot that I was able to do, and we did some pretty amazing things. That's what does an eye opener. What the Wharton training gave me for innovation, I was able to realize with the Qmarkets. Tremendous partnership. That's what it's about. Adapting to emerging pain points and driving to the outcomes. So strategic partnerships are the ones to enable business outcomes. Those should be identified and pursued versus just transactional relationships. Here's my hardware, here's my software, here's my services, and in the end, are you winning? You need the solution. Are you winning? Are you growing continuously towards your goal?
And companies like Amazon and Domino's are setting the new standard. You could see that Freudian slip from my roots at Stanford. They're setting a new standard in terms of speed and efficiency. And with procurement processes, they have to adapt. We see a clear difference among our clients where they have old processes versus modern processes. Procurement needs to keep up with the speed of innovation, and a failure to do so requires a shift in understanding that there's a difference between seeing innovation and trying to do cost cutting. Cost cutting is important, but there's also an opportunity for procurement to use innovation as a lever to move forward versus an inhibitor.
Right. And this is another big one for us. And what we notice is governance that's intolerant to setbacks is not going to be conducive. What I've learned in a 16,000 member organization personally, something I can narrate here, my team would work 24/7, passionate people, and they would go off and particularly against the skeptics and some of the headwinds that we'll face in changing inertia. They would go and they'll from time to time they'll come fallen short, and you have best laid plans. You go there, there's difficulties, there's mistakes that genuine human obstacles in the way, and failures. I believe that as a manager, I have to own the failure. When there's a win, the team owns the win. That kind of a mindset earned me the nickname sweeper. So when my team would run into a problem, they say, call the sweeper. What does the sweeper do? Sweeper sweeps away obstacles. That was the role of the manager leader. We find that a governance that's flexible, that's supportive, that's humble, that's more of the servant mindset. Serve the team. The star of the team is the team. So doing it that way, such a governance is going to support and it's going to decide the winners and losers in our view. And an organization that focuses on the failures and punishes is expecting, in my mind, an unrealistic outcome.
Through this picture, if you take a look, you can't necessarily know who is the end user, who's the IT specialist. It's the trainer or the trainee. They're training each other. And one of the barriers that we're seeing is a low adoption rate of technology. Let's say you have a prototype, and this prototype's affects the everyday of a worker. There needs to be a way to really have those conversations and those iterative processes to understand from different points of view, this is actually helping me meet my deadlines. This is not a hindrance, and why. And understanding that across generations, those diverse perspectives matter, and it allows organizations to accelerate impact and generate buy-in versus having a technology sit around and get dusty. Also, the 24/7 support, that's huge. And that's something Utopian offers, because you need to support the team and realize that they need an extra innovation set of wings when they don't necessarily know the answers, and those need to be proven out very quickly to generate ROI.
So that brings us to what we call the big one, right? What we said at the beginning and what we're saying at the end. These are two big ones, bookends, what we call risk-averse culture. When we were children, why we consider children as the greatest innovators? When we were children, we all learned that we had to walk, right? And then to do that, we took a risk of taking a step forward. And I don't know of any baby that actually did it the first time right. But the thought of taking risk, not being afraid, and saying that the general direction I have to do it, failing and failing fast, failing often, learning quickly. This is what we all did as children. And that connecting to the child within is the central philosophy of Utopian, that we say for every one of us, hey, connect to the child within, just try, right? That's exactly what Steve mentioned early on. Just get started and try. Go be the child that we all were. And it's exciting and fun. Persevere or pivot. These are two things. Either you persevere with, remember what I said, 6 months, it would have taken, or a 6-week project, they ended up taking 15 months in the end. But they need to pivot and try the different things that allows them that necessary credibility, and you take the ones that take longer time, you get there eventually as well. Just the sweeping is important of obstacles. Jack Welch would say, and he's one of my gurus, sorry for repeating that, but the thought is that he would say, celebrate every little win, find a way to bring a cake, when times are better and so on, and like we get back to the new normal, hopefully the cakes will be allowed and people can celebrate every little win. For us at Utopian, we think that leaders up until now have missed one key metric: safety, productivity, competitive advantage. Those things are business basics, but we think Happiness as a measure of business success must be measured. We say life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, but happiness is not measured, right? How do you improve something that you don't measure? So happiness, how do you measure? We ask our people, level 1 to level 10, how happy are you? And if people have anything less than 10, we strive to close that. That's how we measure. So I'll give you an example. The idea of a particular client, big pharma client, right? Comes in Friday evening and they're doing very important work. As you can imagine, they're coming and saying, I have this need, and it's a Friday evening, 6 o'clock, I'm asking, and I know that you folks have been working very hard. No, you don't have to work over the weekend, but come in, maybe like early next week. The team member from Utopian jumps up and puts 5 fingers in each hand and says, level 10. We're saying that, hey, this is not work for us. This is a passion for me. Because I'm passionate about what I do, it's fun, and I'm going to get it done. And that gentleman actually got it done by Sunday night. The client won by Monday morning. They exceeded expectations. The happiness is growing. When people are happy, it's a happier workplace. It makes plain business sense. The client wins.
And speaking of that specific employee we have, he shared that he was living his dream, and those roles of story, they matter within an organization. I'm going to share a personal story from my life based on my great-grandfather, who actually worked in Thomas Edison's studio fixing batteries. And if you can imagine Thomas Edison, he would stumble forward. He wouldn't be scared to experiment and throw all the ideas on the table, because that's going to lead to new thoughts, new ways of thinking that could drive you in a different direction that you can't necessarily anticipate prior. As a former Disney cast member, we're dream builders. And although I do believe in magic, magic is often in the details, as Walt Disney said. And from DP's background at IBM, TJ Watson said, do not tame the wild ducks. A lot of times within an organization, there's people who are going in one direction, but there may be a select few who are going in the opposite direction. And that matters. So don't deter that. Don't tame the wild ducks. Let it happen, because those stories and those experiences are going to drive innovation and that innovation mindset. I want to move on, DP, to share that there are external stories, but many stories are internal stories. We're working with one of our incredible business partners, Rick Stone, whose new book, Story Intelligence, is coming out in February. And there's an opportunity to really create a master story within training programs that start with 1 hour, 1 day, 1 week. His experience actually started off in Disney Ideas, which is right before Disney Imagineering. So you can imagine how much we treasure his expertise.
So we wrap this up now. How to overcome the top 10 innovation barriers and to grow safety, productivity, and yes, happiness. We set out with the objective threefold. One is, what are the top 10 inhibitors? Round them up, like the most wanted list, right? We're constantly doing this, so people can actually have a convenient checklist, right, as to succeed in the digital transformation journey. We also said that once you know the inhibitors, you know what to do about them. So therefore, you move to the accelerator mindset. And we said specifically 2 tools. Are there things that you could use today that to advance in your journey? And you can see them on the right side. To form the team of champions, positive mindset with Appreciative Inquiry. That is a tool. Work with us, and we'll connect you with the right experts in that area, particularly from the Case Western Reserve, and we'll move forward in that direction. Misalignment to business outcomes, not a science fair, as she said, as Lisa said. Drive common definition of success early on. Get started. Along the way, pull. So exactly as Steve said, execute, pull, begin to pull in the common language of what success is. Cloud transition shouldn't be a conversation left to middle management. It should be a leadership play, and you move to the single source of truth. Win over skeptics, listen to them, but don't stop, and win with quick wins. We showed you the right use case judiciously. Do not be enamored by cool and shiny tech like a moth moving to fire, because there's R&D and there's production. You need some competitive analysis and guidance. We can deliver that to help you to get to ROI, or whatever metric the success is. Strategic partnerships drive sustained business outcome, not transactional relationships. Must go beyond that and invest for the long haul. Commitment, that's what Steve said. We completely agree. That's what it's about. Long term, through the pain, 24/7. Innovations investment. It's not just about cost cutting, and procurement has to evolve here. Support team during setbacks. Don't kick down. And when the team wants help, be the sweeper. And when the team wins, help the team share that. Listening extra, making sure end user is there from day one, front and center as the prototype is being developed. That way, supporting that end user to win, we see that as a path to adoption rate increase. And eventually, the storytelling part of it. Ginny Rometty at IBM would tell stories all the time. And the best leadership organizations we see are the people who are leading change are telling stories. And we have Rick Stone with us, 32 plus years of experience and master among the Disney community. We're really fortunate that Disney, had that kind of training and creating magical moments and so on.
So we're here to help as an extension of your innovation team. On the screen now are email addresses and our website. We want to take a moment to thank Qmarkets for your outstanding partnership and open the floor to a Q&A.
Thank you, Elliot, and thank you, Steve. Phenomenal partnership.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, guys. We really appreciated those insights. Personally, for me, that was really inspiring. I really enjoyed what you had to share, and hopefully the rest of our audience did as well. Just so all of you know, we will, of course, be sharing the contact details of DP and Lisa and Utopia in a follow-up email, along with the recording of this session. But for now, let's dive into the Q&A. I'm conscious that we've already gone a little bit over the allocated time slot, so we won't keep you guys too long. But we do have a really nice question here. How do you balance use cases that don't have clear ROI, but are important to develop foundational capabilities?
Excellent. So this is where it comes down to the leader in the organization with C-level intervention. Because at the end of the day, the business exists or dies based on the relationship between the revenue and the cost. If the revenue minus cost balance works out, then it'll sustain. Otherwise, it's out of balance, it doesn't. So the C-level leader has the responsibility to set the vision and drive down to the specific mission, right? The concept of walk and chew gum at the same time. That is a responsibility, setting the strategy. But execution comes down to the specific use case and so on to get that. There needs to be an alignment. So if the top level leadership is bought into it, and that's what we say from day one, right? Bring the right people into the game and make sure they're bought into it. Then it is their responsibility to make sure when the people who are responsible for execution towards meeting those, the mission and vision, the targets, the milestones, then when people ask, it's a responsibility of the leader to actually support. Some of them will be immediately actionable, depending on whether the organization needs immediate returns. You have to choose your use cases accordingly and work with the leader. But you also need to plant those seedlings along the way. Like you said, the new cases, the new capabilities may not bring immediate results, but you need to invest for the long haul. The digital transformation challenge is very similar to the Serengeti, right? If you to get to the other side, you need to be able to do both. Get the immediate benefits to sustain, to pay the bills, but plant the seedlings so you can actually develop the capabilities and not fall behind compared to your competition. It's a balance. There's no single easy way of doing it. It's a balance. But if the right people are engaged and you have the right positivity, you'll make the right trade-offs. And we can help, by the way.
Let me add to that. It can be holistic, right? So what I've observed is our really world-class clients are holistic. I call it hitting singles, right, in baseball terms, which is ROI is clearly a campaign. You're running, you're looking for innovation around ROI, but at the same time, in parallel, I love seeing clients who say, we have HR issues right now. How can we improve the experience working at our company? How can we make returning to work in the times of COVID safer? These are all fair topics, and they're innovative, right? You're looking for answers from your employees, and so you of course go after ROI and customer focus and new products, but at the same time, our tool enables you to do many different things at the same time. So that's to me the answer is don't limit it, do all of it.
It's a commitment. So absolutely right. It's a commitment, and from top to bottom, it has to be prioritized. And as Steve and I both are saying, right, and Lisa as well, you need to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. Chew gum means what you're doing, what you need today, right? Walk is what's going to get your organization forward. Both are necessary. It's a balance.
And one thing that occurs to me, guys, is that you could employ something like a 3 horizons framework where you split it 70, 20, 10 between the different different timescales of each innovation. So that could be a good way to divide your commitments and resources as well. So I'll move on to the next question anyway. So how do you get people excited about doing the grunt work, the manual labor required to eventually enable value creation when it comes to innovation?
Yes.
I could start with this. Could I start with this, DP?
Go ahead.
So my first role at Disney, I was a role hopper. So I had a different job every single day, and I valued every single one, regardless of what it was. And that's where you're learning that you believe in the culture and the value and the traditions, that you bring your best self, and you realize that you're part of the larger mission, the larger team. And for me, I always rolled my sleeves up, because going above and beyond matters, and what you do when no one else is looking, that's important. Live the character and live your values, and as you do that every day, you're going to drive towards happiness and fulfillment, and those are critically important. Roles, I think we often put too much emphasis on what the role is. Every single role is important.
I would also say one more thing, right? That's why we're super excited about this concept of appreciative inquiry. If you go deep into it, the research there says when the conditions are correct, when people are looking at something beyond themselves, right? What we call happiness beyond ourselves. That's what Lisa says. But the idea of like, hey, there is a connected intelligence. It's not just about me. It's about the team that's going to win here. Especially with digital transformation, it's a do or die. Half the Fortune 500 firms will disappear in the next 10 years. So given that the stakes are high, it's important that people have to bond, clarify the mission, and make sure the right incentive is that you will not need to manage them. In other words, the concept of pushing and coaxing and punishing, those things go aside. This is what the theory of appreciative inquiry actually says. When you have the people in the right frame of mind, right, you don't need all those. The people won't see that as grunt work. People look at that as, like I showed you, right? The idea of Friday evening, the request comes at 6 o'clock. People would have normally packed up and gone if it's transactional. But when the person recognizes that, hey, the client is in need of help, and I need to do something here, they're actually trying to go solve the problem of saving the world. Literally, they were saving the world, right? A big pharma company, and saying that no, we recognize, we connect, and this is not grunt work for me. This is something. Let me actually give you another example. The famous story in NASA, right? People go to this person sweeping the floor and says, hey, what are you doing? You can say that's grunt work, or the person said, you know what I'm doing? I'm actually sending a man to the moon. So, and people connect to the greater intelligence, what we call connected intelligence, greater connected intelligence, then amazing, extraordinary things become routine.
And let me just close out on that one with, there's 3 things that we do automatically with the platform. One is the system's built to reward and recognize your employees, right? One of the biggest negatives is, where did my idea go? Right? There's no transparency, and there's no built-in reward and recognition, primarily when you're collecting ideas. The tool enables that. Secondly, allow the employees to own the idea, right? So it's one thing to take the idea and then build it. It's another thing to say, hey, this was your idea. We want you to take it on a journey, even if you don't have the skill set. We've seen incredible results from clients who really give an entrepreneurship model to their employees, and almost are doing startups within the organization with employees who have ideas. And then the final one is, you've got to allow time. Lisa, you hit on this. You mentioned the rotating job. We see clients who are very good at saying, you know what, if you see a project that you're interested in, and you're an engineer, you're in R&D, you're in marketing, and you're passionate about it, we want you to be able to dedicate some time to it. So the system enables all 3 of those. It allows what we call organic team building to happen, where projects come together with the workforce of the willing, essentially.
And that is one of the things, Steve, that I actually found great about the Qmarkets. That we talk about diversity, empathy, inclusion of different perspectives, and equity of voices. This platform has that built in from day one. So that's one of the things I loved about it. The first time we introduced the platform, 3 weeks was crickets. People are trying to use it. Next 2 weeks, we had 274 ideas that were generated. It's just phenomenal once people recognize that, hey, when I put something in, my voice counts, and it's transparent, it's fair, radically transparent. So the platform delivers.
Great. And if we have time, there's one more question, which might be nice to end it on. So what distinction do you make between happiness and fulfillment? It's actually quite a philosophical question. Do any of you guys want to hazard an answer there?
Absolutely. I'll start, and DP, feel free, or Steve, to hop in. For me, in understanding happiness and measuring it on a day-to-day basis with our internal and external stakeholders, happiness changes day by day, sometimes moment to moment. And there's things that we know and don't know. There's things that we can control and cannot control. So I think happiness is a branch of a larger fulfillment. And happiness is linked to purpose. And when you're living your purpose, as I feel DP and I certainly are, you're gaining a fulfillment. So they're pieces of each other from my perspective.
I would also add one more thing to that, saying that, look, we don't have all the answers. We know that it is being missed. How do you improve something? When you say life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, right? We talk about happiness, but we don't measure it. How do you improve something when you can't even measure? Then the question becomes, what is happiness? What, versus like fulfillment, other subtle definitions that exist. I come from India, where like over 5,000 years of history, people have actually been asking these questions. So we can't answer it in a short way here. But what we are clear about is it's a right question to ask. It's a right metric that we need to bring in with a simple, basic philosophy. Happier employees means happier workplace, means better business outcomes, means happier customers. So making happiness as a metric and measuring it matters. And so in terms of fulfillment, all the other things, papers need to be written, and we think like that's an area where collectively we have to explore. We're asking the right question here.
And then let me just, I would close out with this. So, and it connects to innovation, right? Clayton Christensen, if you are or aren't aware of him, is the father of disruptive innovation. Really, probably in modern era is recognized as one of the thought leaders on innovation. He's also a very deeply spiritual, he's just an amazing person. He passed away this year. One of the last things he produced was an article. If you look it up under Harvard Business Review, it's called "How Will You Measure Your Life?" And it really addresses this topic, which says we all have jobs, right? This is the challenge we all have, right? Engagement, collaboration. Every company we talk to and hear from hopes that the tool will at least help engage their employees and give them purpose and passion. And the reality is, DP, you shared the example of the NASA sweeper, right? That's the thought is some of it is connected to your job, but you really can have happiness and fulfillment in doing everything you do in life. In fact, it's really well written in this article, but it goes back to who are you, what are your goals, and what are you trying to accomplish? And he shares this in an innovation light that, again, how will you measure your life? Harvard Business Review. It's a nice article, very short, where he poses that question and gives some things to think about. So.
Absolutely. And he actually says, he concludes by saying that it's about nurturing the quality relationships in your life. So there is work to be done in that regard. He also points out, like, the theory of disruptive innovation, of course, father of it, right? He also says, at the same time, what is the job to be done? When we're looking at digital transformation, what's the job to be done? Pick the lowest level of technology to get it done. And in that process, nurture quality relationships. I think that is that sums it up. Steve, thank you.
Excellent. Well, yeah, those are some really great answers, and I'm sure the audience appreciated that. So thank you so much, DP, Lisa, and Steve for your great insights today. And thank you everybody for joining. We'll be sure to send you a recording of this session within the next few days. And please be sure to register for our upcoming webinars. And if you have any questions or additional thoughts, or if you'd just like to discuss any of the concepts we've discussed today, please feel free to reach out.
Right. And one last thing, Elliot, if people are welcome to connect with us. We showed you our emails in the last slide, utopian.world. Phenomenal partnership with Qmarkets. We in Utopian, as we work with our clients, we are actually taking Qmarkets as part of a standard part of the operating system in every organization. So recommend using it, and come to us and we can help you with that as well.
Thank you
so much.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, DP. Take care, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.